The Canvas video provides an overview of what we are focusing on this week. It points out the key areas that we will be discussing, which are scoping, scheduling, and costing. Often, project managers tend to gloss over the planning phase, or they don't give it the necessary time required. The result is that they inevitably have to compromise on something later in the project to get it finished on time. In order to define the scope of a project, it is necessary to first establish the project objectives. Remember, this is something that we discussed during initiation. Gaining an overview of what the project is all about and considering what needs to be achieved during initiation prepares the project manager to formally clarify objectives and begin scoping the project. Scoping forms the foundation of the planning phase and considers the overall deliverables of the project. To define scope, you need to start by identifying the following. First, clarify around the objectives. Second, the tasks that need to be performed. And third, the resources that will be required. Once you have identified these elements, you will need to determine the limitations or parameters of the project and clearly identify any aspects that are to be excluded. Let's take a look at Peter's office project. Peter's office project is quite different from the other scenarios we have looked at. The reason for this is because the project has been handed to him without him being involved in initiating the project. Moreover, he has never managed a project before. As a result, he is in a pretty difficult position, as the information has just been thrown at him with the directive to just get on with it and make it work. The project objective has therefore already been identified as the development and implementation of a system to help school leavers find jobs in the local community. If Peter is going to be successful, he's really going to have to unpack that broad objective by breaking it down into smaller objectives. So where should Peter start? A good starting point would be for Peter to identify the activities that are the next level down to implement such a system. Once he is able to identify those smaller, more manageable activities, he can systematically start planning how these activities might be done. An example of this is meeting.
Costing is one of the triple constraint elements we have previously referred to. Typically, when we consider undertaking a DIY project such as Janet's tiling project, we are usually limited to the amount of money that is available. As a result, we need to plan, manage, and control our project costs using a budget. This budget is a limitation or constraint. By constraint, we mean that we are required to deliver our project within a predetermined amount. In order to prepare a budget, the first thing we need to do is estimate the various costs that will be incurred during the project to complete the identified project activities. In project management terminology, this exercise is referred to as developing a cost estimate, and the accuracy of this will in part depend on past experience in undertaking the same or similar type of projects. In order to develop the cost estimate, Janet would need to do the following. Firstly, estimate the resources required for the activities she will need to undertake in a kitchen. These may be quantities of materials, which in her case would be tiles and tile cement, equipment such as a tile cutter, supplies, and additional human resources. Would Ben help perhaps? After estimating resources, we would need to estimate the duration of each of these activities. Some may have an hourly, daily, or weekly rate, for instance. Janet would need to hire the tile cutter for the duration of the project. Finally, Janet will need to prepare a cost estimate based on the best information available of the resources she identified and the cost of their supply. Now, reflecting on the project, how do you deal with the additional costs that have come about through undefined activities or the temptation to add more items to scope? Where a budget has been fixed, we would need to revisit the original scope and work breakdown structure to consider the proposed change addition and how it might impact on our schedule and whether it is achievable. If the scope change cannot be accommodated, we essentially have two options. We can seek additional budget support based on the impact of the cost estimate that the change addition will have. And if this is not possible, we would need to trade off by reducing scope on some of the existing activities in the original scope, which is also referred to as de-scoping. This option usually results in a compromise of quality, and as a result is generally an unpopular choice.